Hey, have you heard about what happened recently? The United States decided to restrict the visas for certain European Union officials. At first glance, you might think, okay, just another diplomatic disagreement, right? But here's the thing, if we step back for a moment and look through the lens of China's long history, patterns like this aren't new at all. In fact, history of China is full of echoes of similar strategies, stretching back centuries. Think about the Ming Dynasty, dealing with unruly tribute missions at Ningbo, or the Qing officials trying to control foreign trade. Time and again, Chinese rulers faced with this delicate challenge. How do you maintain order, protect the sovereignty, and manage foreign pressure all at the same time? So, in today's episode, I want to take you on a journey across time. We'll see how modern diplomacy often rhymes with history, and maybe, just maybe, we can hear what the past is trying to whisper to us, if we're willing to listen. Now, here's something interesting. Whenever outside actors challenge a government's rule or try to disrupt the normal order, authorities usually respond in a very specific way. They rarely shut the door completely. Instead, they target certain individuals or groups, imposing restrictions just enough to maintain control. It often works in the short term. Things seem calm, but the underlying tensions don't disappear. Sometimes, these measures even lead to unexpected consequences. Back in 1523, something dramatic unfolded in the Chinese port city of Ningbo. Two Japanese tribute delegations arrived almost at the same time, each claiming official status. Disputes over gifts and protocol quickly escalated, and before long, violence broke out in the streets. Local officials struggled to restore order. Merchants panicked. What should have been a tightly managed ritual of diplomacy turned into open chaos. The Ming court responded cautiously. Rather than cutting off contact with Japan entirely, it suspended operation at the Ningbo customs office and tightened maritime controls along the coast. The goal was precision, contain the disruption without dismantling the entire tributary system. In the short term, order did return. Official trade resumed under stricter supervision, and the tribute system continued to function, at least on the surface. But beneath that surface tranquility, a deeper reality persisted. Along China's southeastern coast, the demand for maritime trade was actually expanding, even as official channels were suppressed. Merchants, intermediaries, and local communities continued to seek access to overseas markets. This gap between official policy and economic reality created fertile ground for smuggling networks. Chinese merchants, Japanese traders, and armed groups increasingly became entangled, blurring the lines between commerce, piracy, and survival. What followed was not simply one-sided raids by foreign pirates, but a transnational maritime underworld that brought violence and unrest to coastal societies on both sides of the sea. So, while the policy was designed to restore order, it also reshaped the maritime world in unintended ways. The lesson is not that disorder came from abroad, but that when economic realities collide with rigid controls, new and often more dangerous forms of instability can emerge. By the mid 18th century, Western merchants and envoys were pushing for more access to China. Canton, today's Guangzhou, was no longer enough. They wanted more ports, more freedom, and in some cases, a permanent presence. From the Qing government's perspective, this raised a serious question. How do you allow foreign trade without losing control over commerce and influence? The answer was the system later known as the Rules to Guard Against Foreigners, under which all foreign trade was confined to a single port, Canton. Where foreigners could live, where they could go, and who they could deal with were all strictly regulated and carefully recorded. This was not an attempt to shut China off from the world. It was an attempt to keep foreign contact within clearly defined boundaries. And at first, it worked. Trade continued, revenue flowed, and local officials found it far easier to manage foreign merchants. The system created stability and, perhaps more importantly, predictability. Over time, however, rigidity became its weakness. The system struggled to adapt to new pressures and shifting expectations. Many Western merchants came to see these restrictions as unreasonable, even insulting. This was not the direct cause of the Opium Wars, but by this point, the conditions for deeper diplomatic conflict had already taken shape. Once again, the pattern repeats. Precision and control can produce short-term order, but inflexibility often plants the seeds of much larger problems down the road. In the late Qing period, foreign missionaries and residents increasingly operated deep inside local society, and clashes became more frequent. Some violated local regulations, others became entangled in disputes that local communities found deeply unsettling. For the Qing officials, the challenge was acute. These were not ordinary visitors. They were connected, directly or indirectly, to powerful foreign states. The response, not surprisingly, was selective restriction. Rather than expelling all foreigners or closing ports entirely, authorities focused on specific cases. Certain missionaries were barred from residing in particular provinces. Foreign traders who crossed local rules could be confined to designated areas. In the short term, this approach worked. Local order was restored, tensions cooled, and officials regained a degree of control on the ground. But the situation didn't stay contained for long. These localized restrictions didn't remain local. Through diplomatic channels, they were elevated into international disputes, sometimes far larger than the original incidents themselves. We see the same pattern playing out again. Target limits can diffuse immediate disruption, but when power is asymmetric and trust is seen, even small restrictions can trigger consequences far beyond the original intent. Across these centuries, a recurring pattern emerges. Governments almost always prefer precision over total closure, rules over chaos, and control over uncertainty. In the short term, these target bans work. They restore order, they project authority. But history has a way of reminding us that no policy is an island. Whether it was the Ming Court trying to contain a riot in 1523, or the late Qing officials navigating the friction of a changing world, every carefully placed restriction sent ripples outward. These ripples were shaped by things a decree could never control: power, trust, and human nature. What started as a small spark, a single ban, a local restriction, often grew into a consequence far beyond what anyone intended. The scale of the map has changed, and the names on the desks are different. But the echo is the same. Precision can diffuse a crisis, but it cannot solve a lack of trust. The past isn't just a collection of dates. It's a whisper, inviting us to look at today's headlines and recognize the patterns we've seen before. The question isn't just about who is being restricted today. It's about what kind of ripples we are setting in motion for tomorrow.